What's up, guys? It's Overzon here. So today I'm bringing you a much needed review of the Blade 200 QX. This thing is awesome. I'm just going to start out the review by saying the Blade 200 QX is probably one of the best quads you're going to be able to find at a hobby store. Now, there's a lot of things that make this quad great. For one, it's a good size. I don't know what category you'd call it. If you'd call it a medium-sized quadcopter or a micro quad or it definitely isn't a nano quad. Well, it isn't a nano, it isn't a micro, but it's not a medium because the Andromeda Omnis is more of a medium-sized quad, and it's bigger than this, but it's bigger than the nano quads like the Nano QX or something like that. So it's kind of hard to determine what size it is. I mean, but this size is really good, especially for the motors that it uses. This thing uses brushless motors, so this thing gets a ton of power. This thing is just a powerhouse. I mean, normal like medium-sized quadcopters have brushed motors that have gears. They have gear shafts, and they use a mechanism with gears to make the rotor spin. Where this guy, I mean, it's direct access. It's brushless motors, as you can see, and they're really nice. I mean, this thing is just a powerhouse. So I mean, you've seen, if you haven't seen any videos on my channel, this thing in action. Go to my channel, you can check it out. There's a bunch of videos I've uploaded where I've strapped a keychain camera to the bottom of this thing, and I had it flying around. It does have a camera module you can purchase with it. The camera module that you can purchase with it has rather been a disappointment to a lot of people, like Fly and Ryan RC and a few others. They've been really disappointed with it, and that's why I didn't buy it. I just spent $20 and I got a keychain camera, and it actually works surprisingly well. Now this only comes in a bind and fly option. There is no RTF version. It only comes in BNF. And RTF stands for ready to fly, where it comes with the transmitter and everything. So you have to supply yourself with the transmitter. I'm using the DX5E or something like that, the Spektrum DX5E, which actually works with this quad. There actually is a manual inside of the box that actually tells you which transmitters work for it. So, check that out. If you go buy this at a hobby shop, they'll probably if you ask them what transmitters will work, which is what I did, they'll usually tell you which ones. And I bought the cheapest one, which was like $40. So, this is the battery that comes with it. It's a pretty big battery. It's a 2S 7.4 volt, 800 milliamp hour, 5.9 WH. It charges as 2 cells, so it's technically 2 batteries in this, 2 cells. And it's up to a 1C charge rate, so it does come with the charger as well. There's a little plug that comes with it that plugs into the charger itself, and then it allows you to charge. This is the charge port here, and this is the port that goes in the quad itself. It's about anywhere from an hour to 2 hours of charge with this, and you get there's a bunch of LVCs with this thing. I think the first LVC warning is at 8 minutes. 7 to 8 minutes. The next one's at like 9 minutes, and the last one's at like 10 minutes. So if you push it, you could probably make it to about 11 minutes, but I personally would recommend stopping at 8 minutes to keep this battery working for a long time, because I'm sure this battery is going to be hard to find. You probably have to order it online or something if you want to get another one. So yeah. Now the battery itself is pretty good. Like I said, you get a decent flight time. It is a pretty powerful quad, so you can't expect a 20-minute flight, but it's still a decent amount of flight time. Now the quad itself, in the box, the landing gear is not attached. You have to attach this landing gear by yourself, and it actually uses some, like, I think they're sprockets or something like that. I can't remember what they're called, but there's a little tool you have to screw them in. They're kind of a pain in the butt to put on, but once you get them on, they're pretty nice, and it helps. It looks really cool with the landing gear on. I personally have not flown without the landing gear because I don't know why you'd want to. I mean, if you have landing gear, you might as well use it, because then you can land it in grassy areas. If you don't use the landing gear, there are little like rubber feet on the bottom of each motor pod. However, I would just put in the landing gear. I mean, the landing gear also help with orientation too. It's got a nice, unique design with the landing gear that don't make it, back heavy or top heavy. It's really nice. So you have red in the front to help keep orientation. You have red in the front, and you have gray in the back. Sorry, it's a kind of a gray background, but you have gray in the back. Your orientation's pretty easy to keep, especially with the LEDs. Now the LEDs were one thing that I was a little like what about. And that's because it has red in the front and green in the back. Now, normally you'd think that, it'd be like car headlights, red in the back for stop and green in the front for go. I mean, some people have been able to just easily change that. I'm sure it's an easy fix. But, I mean, after you've been flying it for a while, you kind of just get used to it. Like, I wouldn't even change it now because I'm so used to it. And if I changed it to the way it should be, I would probably get confused. So, I mean, that's kind of weird how Blade decided to take it that route and not the other way around. But, whatever. It works. It gets it across. This thing's a night flyer because the canopy is transparent. It's like a transparent white, pearl white color, which looks really nice. And the LEDs actually shine through this thing through the top and through the bottom. There's LEDs in each arm. They actually aren't visible while the quad is off because they shine through the canopy, so they illuminate off of the body. So you can see it really well, and you can see it from the top and through the bottom. And then there's also an indicator LED on the back right here that tells you what rates you're in. Well, it'll tell you what mode you're in. Green is like, calm flight. Blue is more aggressive. Blue is like it's a little more. It has more pitch to it. And red is no gyro. Red means there's no gyroscope in this thing. It's on its own. This thing is 6-axis stabilization, so it's really stable. This is going to be a long review because there's so many good things to say about this and not many bad things. First of all, this quad just looks awesome. I mean, this thing looks like a drone, like a mini drone, which I would actually consider this a drone. There's a lot of air vents on top because it actually does get pretty hot. There's no air vents on the bottom, but whatever. So, I mean, there's a lot of good things about this. Now, there was one awkward thing that I found with it, with the battery bay. There is a battery bay in here, and, you just have this wire that's hanging out. I think that an on and off switch might have been appropriate, put it somewhere up here, but then again, when you think about the camera module, but, I mean, an on and off switch would have been appropriate with it, because it's kind of awkward trying to, jam this battery in there, and then, trying to get everything all plugged in, and then you need to put everything back together, So that's a little awkward. And when I actually got mine right away out of the box, they, at the hobby shop, they got set up for me. The battery door was actually broken. It actually had a big crack in it, so they gave me a free one, free of charge, which is nice. But I mean, there's a lot of good things to say about this thing. I mean, it's a powerhouse. It's easily visible because it's this white color. It's a good size, so you can fly this thing indoors or outdoors. It's a night flyer. It's definitely a night flyer. The transmitter that you use with this thing is really nice. I mean, the one that I use is a huge transmitter, but it's super nice. And when you get a Spektrum transmitter, you can basically fly almost any quadcopter then, because most quadcopters cooperate with the frequency of the Spektrum transmitters. So, once you get one of those Spektrum transmitters, you can basically almost control every quad. There were a few weird things people have reported about this quad. There's been like some sort of weird kind of like rattling noise that happens with some of the motors. Like some of the motors, if you spin them, they make like a rattling noise, or they make like a weird residue noise. Mine actually doesn't do that. Mine has flawless motors, as Flying Ryan calls them. But I mean, that's what they should sound like. Nice and silent, nice and silent, nothing. This should sound like that. Nice and silent. So yeah, I mean, nice and silent motors for mine. But some people have reported a rattling sound. I actually think this one has a rattling noise. Just a little. But one thing that has been reported, even with people that have the flawless motors, is that when it turns on its axis, it gets there's a residue type of noise, and that is true because mine does that as well, and it has amazing motors, I guess is what you could call it. So that is a normal noise. It could just be electronic noise. It's trying to keep its position. There is no GPS, and this is basically a smaller version of the Blade 350 QX, which is one thing I'm a little interested in. I might get it later. I don't know, and if I do get it, I'll make sure to make a review on it. But I mean, there's another thing I want to say. This thing's canopy is very fragile. I have not actually broken mine, luckily, but other people have actually reported them banking into the ground and then snapping an arm as easy as that. I mean, just, at a medium pitch rate and then hitting a side of the arm into the ground is going to snap this thing's canopy in half on the arm. Flying Ryan had that, and then apparently it's been reported that it's really easy, where if that happens, it's very easy just to fix it by getting a new canopy and then putting it all back, just moving electronics into another canopy. I mean, it's taken people like 10 to 30 minutes to do it. So it's pretty simple, obviously, and if you're a person who's used to doing that type of stuff, you could probably cut that time in half to 10 minutes rather than, 20 minutes. And it does come with a spare of extra props, so that's always nice. The props are pretty tough. If you notice, mine have a few little white marks in them because I have crashed this thing a few times, and surprisingly it didn't break. But I have crashed it a few times, and it didn't break anywhere, which is really nice. One thing I want to say is this thing, again, it being a powerhouse, it can handle a lot of wind. So, it can fly. I flew mine in 25-mile-an-hour winds. That video was a little shaky because it was getting knocked around, but this thing is doable in high winds. So, that's really nice. I mean, normal quadcopters, they usually can't handle more than 10-mile-an-hour winds. But this thing can handle 25-mile-an-hour winds. It was pretty crazy. Anyways, though, I mean, I'm not gonna do a flight review of this thing. I'm just gonna do a tabletop review because there's plenty of videos on my channel showing this thing in action. So, anyways, what would I give this thing a rating out of? I'm actually gonna give it a 10 out of 10. I was very impressed with it. This thing was great. It's a pretty decent price for what you get. And it's a nice size. It's just got a lot of nice things going for it. There wasn't really anything bad that I had to say about it. And if you don't want to, dink around with a stupid camera module, just go on Amazon and buy the SpyCam 808 keychain camera. That's what I use. It's able to hold that. I mean, people have actually reported that it can hold the Mobius. So that's kind of interesting. People also said this thing can carry a GoPro, is what some people said. Other people said it can carry the Mobius. So, I mean, whatever. I'm using a pretty simple camera for mine when I record it, so... Yeah, anyways, that's about the whole review. 10 out of 10. I'd recommend you go buy this thing. This thing's great. So, yeah, anyways, thank you guys for watching, and I hope you all have a good time flying this thing around.